It's Football at 4. Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. It dropped today at 6 a.m. You guys can download that. Check out for more Eagles conversation. I want to get your opinion on a couple of things. We were throwing these out there last week here on Football at 4 with Adam and got his opinion. So let's find out what Jeff's are. Who's under more pressure training camp and into the season? John Gannon, Jalen Hurts, or how about Nick Sirianni, who was, by the way, spotted down at the Jersey Shore in Ocean City this past weekend? Which of those three guys has the most pressure this season?
Well, it's not Nick Sirianni, I don't think. I mean, even if they have a 500 year or not what they're expected to be, I think he still sticks around to see a third year. But obviously that's not the case with either Jalen Hurts or Jonathan Gannon. So they're both in the same boat, but Gannon was the beneficiary of more help this offseason. Of course, Jalen Hurts got A.J. Brown. And, of course, if he wants to be here next year, he's got to be successful. But Jonathan Gannon is a guy that really needs to show, with all the additions he's had on defense, that he can put out defense that's not going to be soft, that's not going to die by 1,000 cuts, and that's going to have a little tooth to it this year. And if he doesn't, I don't know that he's going to retain his job.
Right. I agree with the Gannon one, where he was interviewing for head coaching jobs. And if you mentioned some of the new pieces he has, if they're, and the secondary's better. You mentioned Reddick, Jordan Davis. If they're not a better defense, he can potentially go from a guy who had a head coaching opportunity, I don't want to say to being out of a job, but to being a guy that I likened it to like Greg Roman, the local guy here. When he was in San Francisco, you thought he was going to be the next head coach, and then he just kind of fizzled off the map in terms of getting whatever reason. He's just not getting that head coaching buzz anymore, even though he has Lamar Jackson and an MVP level quarterback. He just kind of fell out of that cycle, and John Gannon could be similar, where if they don't have a good year this year, he might fall off that head coaching map.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the places he interviewed, it's partly because there were some connections there. Minnesota being one, Denver I think was another, and the Houston Texans were sort of casting a wide and fairly unconventional net as far as their head coaching looks. So I would agree that if he does not, the connections only take you so far. They get you interviews, and those two teams that he's connected to hired coaches. So if he does not have a good year this year, that's going to be 2 straight years that his defense really did not perform at a high level. And I would have to think that would drop him out, or at least lower him on a lot of teams' totem poles.
Geoff Mosher, give me your 3 camp battles that you are most interested in.
Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be a ton, certainly not for starting positions. I think safety, the battle between Jaquiski Tart and Marcus Epps, assuming that's going to be a real battle, will be fascinating. I don't know about fascinating, but it'll be really interesting to see. I would say the right guard battle is going to be very, very interesting. You'll have Isaac Seumalo trying to adjust from being a left guard for most of his Eagles career and playing on the right side, and he'll have to fend off Jack Driscoll. And, there are a couple other guys who will make their pitch, but that's basically his main competition there. And slot wide receiver. Everybody assumes it's Quez Watkins' role, but we've talked about the fact that slot may not be the best place for Quez Watkins, and we've been told at Inside the Birds that, and I know nobody wants to hear it, but that Jalen Reagor has had a really good offseason program, and his focus has been there, and we all know that Nelson Aguilar saw his career turn around when they moved him to the slot. So you've got Quez Watkins, you've got Jalen Reagor, and you've got Zach Pascal fighting for their opportunity to play in that position.
The other thing, I don't know, would you classify this as a camp battle, or how Gannon uses the rotation on the defensive front would be on my list? I'm surprised you didn't mention linebacker.
Well, a linebacker could maybe shake itself out depending on, is Davion Taylor ready to play? Is he already lower than Nakobe Dean and Kaiser White on the depth chart? You bring in Kaiser White. You've drafted Davion. I suppose that there's some jockeying that could go on there, but it does feel like Nakobe Dean, as long as he's healthy and can play, is going to grab that spot. And TJ Edwards will play most likely on base downs, run down. So it's really just when do they get Kaiser on the field and when do they get Davion Taylor? And they can do so many different things, Mike, that these guys might wind up playing just in different types of sub packages anyway.
Yeah, and on the front with the defensive line, like I don't know, do they have starting battles, or are you more intrigued just to see what the packages look like?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Like, again, like Jordan Davis, if he's healthy, if he's ready to play, they're going to get him on the field, you would think, because it's a first-round pick and because of the way he could impact the game. But when he's on the field early, is he playing sort of a nose tackle, like right up on the center spot? If he is there really a competition for that job? Because nobody else really would be able to do it the way he does it.
Right.
Even if Noah Ellis makes the team, right, like you're not thinking Noah Ellis is battling him for a spot. So what you're really wondering is, what is that five-man front going to be? If Jordan Davis is there, Hassan Reddick's going to be one, Javon Hargrave's going to be one. That's three right there. Is Fletcher Cox going to be that on first down? Don't know. And is Milton Williams going to get in there? Josh Sweat would have to be in there, you think. So I got to know more about what Jonathan Gannon's plans are for certain looks on certain downs and distances before I can figure out who's competing for snaps where.
Yeah, well, you just brought up an interesting point about, like, if they're going to use a guy on the nose, they don't have a lot of options there, and the options they do have other than Jordan Davis are not the highest of profile guys. So do the less high-profile guys get more snaps than the Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargraves and Milton Williams of the world because they fit the role better?
Yeah, I mean, Fletcher Cox is a fascinating conversation. You would think on a one-year deal, bringing him back at his age, coming off his year last year, that they would like to preserve him more, maybe make him rotational. I don't know if how he'd feel about that. They did it with Michael Bennett when they traded for Michael Bennett. Michael Bennett started off as a backup until somebody got hurt that year. I forget who, and then he wound up playing a lot. Maybe it was Vinny Curry or something. I can't even remember at this point. So he had to play a lot, but he didn't really I remember him being pretty outspoken about the fact that, I know I'm here on the Eagles. They won a Super Bowl recently, or the year before, and they got a deep defensive line, but he was used to being a starter. And he didn't really like the fact that he was playing backups, even though he was playing at the time to start off like 50, 60% of the snaps. He just didn't like the fact that he wasn't out there on first down. So it'll be interesting to see, what's Fletcher Cox's viewpoint of his role, and do the Eagles want to preserve him and use him more as a pass rusher, second and third down, and try to have a bigger front line on first down that might consist of, say, Jordan Davis in the middle, flanked by Javon Hargrave and maybe Milton Williams as your three-man interior, with Sweat and Reddick as your outside rushers.
Well, Williams is, and as we get to training camp, I think it'll be interesting to see where they're using him more, inside or outside.
Right, and same thing with Marlon Tuipulotu, who obviously, did not have the year last year that he wanted. He had a hamstring injury, we reported, that really kind of set him back. But they liked him. They got him in the 5th round 2 years ago at USC. They had a higher grade on him. He slipped in the draft, I think, because there were some injury issues pertaining to him. But they felt, based on his tape at USC, that he had positional versatility to play both a 3 technique, which is what the Eagles usually have at defensive tackle before Jonathan Gannon, but also a 1 technique or a 0 tech to line up and kind of occupy 2 gaps because he's a strength player. And they felt like he had those capabilities. So if he comes to camp this year in shape, ready to go, and much more competitive than last year, then he's probably forcing somebody else out of a spot.
Wow.
So it'll be just sort of interesting.
To be honestly, you almost forget he's on the team, and you're one of the first guys, if not the only guy, that has even brought him up as a possibility. I don't even think people envision him being a part of the rotation.
No, I mean, he's a second-year player, and he's a drafted player.
Interesting.
Higher than Teron Jackson.
Because that would basically, you're right, I was going to say, there were guys who got some time last year that are kind of out of the mix or not on the radar right now. You just mentioned Teron Jackson, but, I don't think anybody thinks of those guys even getting the playing time that they got last year based on what they have in front of them. Brandon Graham returning, signing Derek Barnett, Hassan Reddick is here, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis. Like, where are these guys getting time? And then here you are mentioning guys that no one has even thought of.
Yeah, no, I mean, you cannot discount. Listen, you can't discount a guy who was picked in the 5th round last year ahead of guys like Teron Jackson and Patrick Johnson, and maybe even ahead of guys who were drafted this year, this year later in the draft. So again, versatility helps, and they're running a multiple front defense. So a guy like Marlon Tuipulotu who can play multiple fronts, if he winds up being what they expected him to be, he's got to be in the mix to be in that competition.
Over at ESPN.com, your buddy Tim McManus, they picked one surprise offseason standout for each team for the NFL guys. He's the Eagles guy. Who do you think he picked, or do you already know the answer?
I don't know the answer. A surprise offseason standout.
This is like a precursor.
And Tim wasn't at one of them, just like I wasn't there.
This is a precursor to like the Hank Baskets of the world at Lehigh. You know, you're not even at Lehigh yet. You don't even go to Lehigh anymore, but you're already picking out.
Yeah, is it Deion Kane?
No, under the radar players.
Under
the radar players to know from mini camp workouts. So for the Eagles, the pick was Quez Watkins.
That makes sense. I don't consider Quez an under the radar player. I mean, we've talked about, and no offense to Tim, I'm just saying, like, we've been talking about what Quez is going to be this coming year for weeks now, and how the coach called him the potentially the best number 2 wide receiver that he's ever coached.
Right. He said they talk him up every chance they get, believing he has the tools to be a highly productive receiver, but finding targets for him could be the issue with Brown, Smith, Goddard. But that Watkins would be in the mix. I think we all anticipate that. But as you said, that slot receiver role, he has to win it still.
Yeah, it'll be a very good. Again, I'm not 100% certain his skill set is conducive to the slot. Even for a vertical slot, you still have to have route running prowess. You still have to be able to do things when the ball doesn't come your way. It's not an easy position. So, and again, when you have speed the way he does and body size and go-get-it ability, which he showed last year, those are typically strengths you would like to see from your outside perimeter wide receiver.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. Download the latest edition of Inside the Birds. The podcast is out. It dropped this morning, and he'll be back on Wednesday's show. We'll talk to Adam tomorrow. This week we're into the NFC portion of our previews with Andrew, and that'll be on Thursday's show here on Football at 4. Geoff Mosher, take care, man.
Take care, Mike.